I am challenging you and every single people in the world, like I've been doing, and every Muslim is doing,
Yeah.
that you will not be able to find true propositions of the Quran contradictory fulfilling these conditions.
Okay, so
Go ahead. Contradiction.
which is the Quran says that shirk cannot be forgiven.
Yeah.
And the second part is when Abraham says to God, I associated others with you, and God forgives him.
Okay, I just want to come back to this very quickly.
Yeah, sure.
So, this is from corpuscoronicum.de. You can view online manuscripts, right?
Yep, very
So
nice.
this is an example of a manuscript that I'm giving you. As you can see, there are no diacritical marks. Yeah? So this shape here, there are actually two consonants that we read today. Ya, sin. Yeah? Even though that could be read as nun, ba, ta, or ya. This
Yeah.
could have been seen, could have been seen or shin.
Yeah.
So you could say, for example, bassa, basha, bushu, bishi, nasha, nishi, tassa, tassi, tasi, tusa, tisi. As you can see, we have ba, ta, nun, ya. Yeah? And sin, shin. And each one having vowels of a, I, u, or
Yeah.
an, right? And shadda, like double letters.
Yeah.
So many permutation and combination.
Yeah.
So this particular form could have been read in so many different ways. More than 120 ways, if I'm not mistaken. With all the combination, probably more.
That's a lot.
Right. So, guess what?
What?
Every single community around the world, Muslims who are reading this Quran from the manuscript, they all read as Yasin. What did it make a uniform reading across the globe when this could have been read more than 120 ways?
Tell me.
Yes. It's not there because you can clearly read in different ways.
Yeah.
But people are not reading any other way. They read only one way.
Okay.
What's really restricting this particular reading? What is it there in this particular reading of the Quran that everyone reads the same when it could have been potentially read in more than 120 different ways?
I don't know.
What did I talk about? A robust memorization transmission, oral transmission,
Okay.
in which all of them read Yasin.
But the question is, when would that start? Because you need evidence for
This-
when that oral
This
transmission
has
started.
been read and documented in the Islamic literature always like this.
Okay.
Earliest you go back, all uniformly reading same.
But when does the Islamic literature really take
Islamic literature started when the Prophet recited the Quran and people wrote it down. It carried on from there. So you can go back as back when people were, if you were there at the time of the Prophet, you would have seen it. If you were there in a 100 generation, 100 years later, you would have seen the same thing.
Because the
So
first
people,
bits of Islamic literature I've heard about come from the 800s. You have things
like what?
like Al-Bukhari.
No.
You have
This is
Abu
again
Muslim,
Christian polemics. When are they going to raise their bar of this Christian polemics and come back to some basic knowledge of Islam? Because all of these are middle-aged argument, outdated, debunked, and
Okay, so
wasted.
tell
in the
me
bin.
the names of some of this Islamic literature
so,
from before
so
the
you have the Quran exactly, like
Okay.
I've given you from
Yeah,
the first.
that's the thing we're discussing,
first
so it
100
can't be proof of itself, but do
no,
continue.
from the 100 years of Islam,
Mhm.
right? And you have all the associated literature. If you go back to, for example, the commentaries of the Quran,
Yeah, the
all the
tafsir, that comes through like the 800s as well, I think. The actual first written copies, anyway.
which is the earliest
So
copy?
we're
Which is
told-
the earliest tafsir that your Christian friends told you?
What's the guy's name?
Tabari?
Yeah, that's the one. Sabari.
Wrong. Try again.
No, you try.
No. Do you know?
Honestly, you
You
will
don't
not
know.
get
Do you know?
any more by asking lots of
That's what I'm saying.
questions. So tell me.
No. You don't know, right?
Okay, so
Right?
tell me.
There are tafsirs from Muqatil bin Sulaiman.
Okay.
Very, very early.
Have you got a written copy of it from very, very early? Or is it?
It's already available. You can actually read all of it.
Okay.
That's available in online, right? So what we're talking about a tradition which Muslim literature is all there, but the Christians never learn. They're polemical to such an extent that they make all these strawman arguments against Islam, not knowing what Islam is. So we have the Quran. As I mentioned to you, at least 55 of them are carbon dated, radiocarbon dated, and 100% almost of the Quran is within the 100 years of Islamic era at that time.
Yeah.
Manuscripts all around the world. If you want to know about like this particular website, corpusquran.tech,
Yeah.
has list of so many different manuscripts. If you want to go, for example, look, if you want to see these are the different manuscripts that you can actually say like, okay, I want to read this manuscript. Here, it will tell you about when this manuscript is from, when it's dated,
Yep.
how is it dated, all Quranic manuscripts.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Why is it that Christians are not really going and looking at those materials?
Well, there seems to be a
Liquid
problem. So, for example,
Christianity
in the-
needs to update
in the
it.
Hadith, yeah. So in the Hadith, it talks about the compilation of the Quran.
Uh-huh.
It says that in some Qurans there were 114 surahs, in others there were a different number.
No, it doesn't say
It
that.
does, yeah, this is in Al-Bukhari.
No, it does not say that.
Okay,
There
tell
is
me that.
there is no Quran that you can find which has like 116 surahs.
Yeah, clearly not now. But Al-Bukhari is saying that there
No,
was.
Al-Bukhari is not saying that. We know that certain companions of the Prophet
Mhm.
wrote their own commentaries
Mhm.
and their explanations and their notes on the Quranic text. The Sunnah manuscript that we talked about earlier, even the author himself, he starts writing, he finishes verse at the end of verse of Surah Al-Anfal, surah number 8,
Mhm.
then he writes Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and then he crosses off, and then he says, La taqul Bismillah, do not say Bismillah. Then he starts Bara'atun min Allah and continues.
Mhm.
So this is within the same text, within the middle of the text.
Yeah.
Some people might think this is part of the Quran, but obviously this is his note saying, don't say Bismillah here, because we have a tradition from the Prophet ﷺ between Surah 8 and Surah 9. Don't say Bismillah here, because there's various reasons why not, because this is about a war, not about mercy, so you're not invoking the mercy of God, the compassion of God. It continues about warfare, okay, how Muslims were unjustly being oppressed, tortured, and driven out their homes, and permission is given now because they broke their treaty to continue fight those people who fight you. So this is what talk about. That's why don't say Bismillah here.
So
But
Surah
he initially,
9, you would say
so-
that's not a rule for all Muslims everywhere when it says
no,
about
no.
kill the infidels.
This you are
There's no need
exactly
for the
no
theatrics.
you are
I'm asking
exactly
serious
you're
questions.
exactly demonstrating the very bankrupt Christian polemics of the Middle Ages, where they're not ever going to learn. This chapter is all about Muslims. At one point, they had several treaties with other Quraysh tribes. Some of them are long-term treaty with no end. Others with a treaty with a particular end. Others and so on. Different treaties. What happened? The Quraysh broke their treaty. The treaty was treaty of peace. If you break the treaty, now you're back in a state of war. So you're back in a state of war. What the Quran says, because you have broken the treaty, so now this is the declaration from God and His Messenger. But that's it. Now,
What they treat was their aggressive behavior also.
yeah, they broke the treaty, of course. So now, because they're in a state of war, the Quran says now, okay, declaration is given, back in the state of war. Now we'll have nothing to hide from God and His Messenger, the upcoming thing that's going to come in. So declare in the greatest day, in the Hajj Akbar. So everyone knows you have 4 months to travel freely, but after that, Muslim will engage, just like you had engaged before. But now you're no longer in a treaty of peace. So in that state of war, you fight them. That's what the whole injunction is. But then it continues. If those people that you're fighting, as they're fighting you, if they stop you fighting and they seek your protection, you stop fighting, you escort them to a place of security. But those groups which did not break the treaties, did not harm you in any way, right? Did not driven you out of your homes, you fulfill the terms of the treaty. So you don't fight them. So you fight those who broke the treaty. So how is this in the Christian mind that anything unjust, unfair, unacceptable? This is exactly what is just, fair, and acceptable. Because people are back in a state of war because of what they have done. Broken the treaty, now you're in a state of war. But even then, the Quran says, you can't just do whatever you want to do just because they are your enemy. If your enemy surrenders and says, I don't want to fight, you escort them to the place where they are safe. Nowhere you will see in human history such a conduct in war, where your competent is escorted to a place of security. Islam provides all of that. And Islam says, fight those who fight you and do not commit transgression. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 190. And do not commit transgression. And God says He doesn't forbid you from having good relationships with people who have not fought you or driven you out of your land. In Surah Al-Mumtahina.
Because Muslims are instructed to, in normal situations, behave good with everyone. So every creation of God. So you are supposed to be good behavior with everyone. Now in war situations, there are exceptions. That's why it's been clarified that we should not continue this attitude of fighting to normal situations.
Can I just ask one question on this point of war and control? So, did you say, Mansur, that in a situation where fighting in self-defense is totally morally justifiable in Islam? Fighting
It's not Islam. Fighting in self-defense should be justifiable universally because you are trying to save yourself from annihilation, from extinction. Yeah.
But was there one situation where there was a tribe who broke it, they were treacherous in some way, and Muhammad had a decision to make? They did sort of surrender, lay down their arms, they weren't aggressive, they laid themselves at the mercy of the Prophet, and he did kill them.
No. Historically inaccurate propaganda. So if you're talking about the fate of Banu Qurayza, even if there's a historical authenticity of it, that's not what I'm talking about now. They, as you said, treacherous, broke the treaty, started fighting, so they were sieged and they surrendered. Now, they're waiting for their fate, what's going to happen. So, Muslims offered them, okay, you can choose who you want to arbitrate on your behalf in terms of what should be done with you. So they chose an individual who they trusted, who was reliable, an ally from Muslims. And he gave, no, not someone they thought, someone they know is reasonable. And he did give a reasonable outcome of what they seek. So what they were seeking is someone who will be giving in favor of them, because he was reliable and he was trustworthy for them. He was their ally. And this particular individual exactly gave them that from their own scripture. What would happen to an individual or community who does that thing? So they were bound by their own scripture, bound by their own law, and their own law said, if you did this and this happened to you, then this is the outcome. And exactly this was done. And they were quite happy and pleased. They didn't object and they didn't quarrel. No, I don't want you to be an arbitrator. They accepted it. Look. No. The Prophet. Hang on. When they chose by their own will an arbiter to arbitrate them, and the arbitration was done according to their own book, own scripture, and they were happy with it, who are we to say, no, it shouldn't be done according to United Nations new law now, or by this and that?
Where's the source for this information in the hadith?
This in Islamic literature.
It would seem like an obvious thing to put in the hadith that the tribe.
So now you're questioning. So now you're questioning the Islamic literature. So now, hang on, because it's the outcome, verdict according to their own scripture. If the scripture says like this, they would follow the scripture because they were the community who believed in the scripture. So if you now, instead of, if you're not, no, I disagree with that. If that was the case, we cannot trust any history from anyone.
No, it means that you need to interpret, you need to think rationally.
Tell me, do you have, for each community, history from the other camp? First, there is a methodological problem because the outsiders would not know what they believe inside. Just like Christians today misrepresent Islam and Islamic teaching, even today at this information digital age, let alone back then. They even said, "Oh, Muslims believe in a God, in a Trinity." If you want to know more about this, you can read a book by Dawah, The Image of the Prophet in the West, published by the Islamic Foundation. Documents to you how even writers like Margoliouth, Muir, and Watt, how they distort information and so on, and traces also back to Middle Age, how they got Islam wrong because of they didn't have access to Islam in the first place. But having access, still they got it wrong. So if you now disregard and question sources coming from a particular community, and you need to get other external communities, then you cannot trust any history because most histories are written from his own community.
You said that was the methodological
Okay,
problem.
Christian.
Method.
So if you want to know about Christianity, okay, tell me about Jesus Christ, what he preached, what he did, exactly from non-Christian sources.
Yeah, you can do that.
Give me some
And
examples.
you'll have sources like Josephus and
Interpolated. Try again. Another one.
honestly, you'd be surprised.
No, I am not surprised.
Strong pushback against this
No.
idea.
I know.
This is
No,
an interpolation.
No. Put me some name. What did
yeah,
you say?
Tacitus.
Tacitus.
Yeah.
Where did you get his information from?
He got his information from living in Rome,
No.
studying what's been handed
Everyone
down.
has to say where information is from. Tacitus, Pliny, you name anyone, you will see the methodological flow. What did Tacitus say?
Tacitus said these wicked people, the Christians, had gathered together in Rome, that Nero blamed them for the fire, that they...
What did they say about Christians? What did they believe about God? What did they believe about salvation? What did they believe about heaven and hell? What did
They
Tacitus
believed
say?
that this guy, Christus, had been alive in Palestine, had been killed by Pontius Pilate, and had been raised from the dead. And
Does he
they,
say he was God?
not in that passage, no, but because it's only
So basic. So now we.
However, Pliny does say they sang hymns to Christ as to a god, and that is from about 100 AD.
Yeah, but where is he getting it from?
He's getting it from the people who were caught and put on trial.
They were not eyewitnesses. So now we have a problem.
Why
Those
were they not eyewitnesses to?
there's no
They were
eyewitnesses.
eyewitnesses to their own belief.
There were no eyewitnesses
So
to
we know that
anything
in
of.
100 AD
There is
they
nothing.
believed that Christ was God.
There are no eyewitnesses for any of the Christian writings. There is simply none. Zilch. Nothing. Not even the New Testament. Not even the other outside New Testament. Zero eyewitness testimony.
It is from eyewitness time.
No.
It really is.
There are zero eyewitness testimony. There are people saying.
You come across very reasonable
No,
until you
excuse
start
me.
making statements like
Okay,
this. So
give me-
now we know that the
Hang
hadith,
on.
you
Hang
said
on.
before,
No.
the hadith is no
Relax.
one can question them.
Relax.
The Islamic literature
Relax.
is fine. I'm perfectly relaxed. But then you were saying
Name
the
me
New
eyewitness. Name me
The
eyewitness.
New
that wrote.
Testament is not an eyewitness at all.
Name me an eyewitness that wrote about Christ.
The
Just
Apostle
one.
Matthew.
Matthew wrote as an eyewitness.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. And how do you know he was an eyewitness?
From the chain of testimony that
By who?
Irenaeus of Lyon tells us.
Tell us what?
And he tells us from the witness of his teacher, Polycarp of Smyrna. He tells us from his teacher, the Apostle John.
So Matthew eyewitness Jesus Christ.
Yep,
Yeah, he was
and
an-
John as well, I'm saying.
Ma-
So Matthew and John,
Matthew-
two eyewitnesses,
Matthew.
two apostles.
So let's take him as an eyewitness. Is Matthew a man of good character and integrity?
After he met Jesus, yes.
Okay. So why is he lying in his gospel, making things up in his gospel, distorting history in his gospel, inventing things in his gospel? I made 4 claims.
Those are big claims, yeah.
Shall I just substantiate each one?
Yes, please.
Okay. So let's start with first page of Matthew. Matthew starts with the genealogy.
Yep.
These are the genealogies from Abraham to David, David to Exalt to Babylon, and then to Jesus Christ. All the generations.
Yep.
14, 14, and 14. 42 generations. False.
Big claim.
Wrong. Erroneous.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
Ahistorical. So very first page tells me Matthew is giving me a distorted picture of history. So how can we trust anything he says? When we go back to the people in the Old Testament times in Chronicles, chapter 3, and if you read that chapter, you will see there are more people which were in the genealogies. But Matthew says no. These are all the generations, all of them, not some. He says all of them. All. But we know that's not the case. He has taken away some names. And the names he's taken away is not just coincidental. Now it gives another layer of our questioning Matthew's character. The name he's taken, one name stands out very importantly, prominently. It takes out Jehoiakim. Matthew says Josiah begat Jehoiakim and the brothers during the time of exile to Babylon. Verse 10 or 11. False. Matthew is omitting the name Jehoiakim. Josiah begat Jehoiakim in Chronicles, who begat Jeconiah and the brothers. He omitted the name of Jehoiakim. So he made grandfather the father of Jeconiah and the brothers.
Okay.
So why is the father taken away? When you go to Jeremiah 36:30 or 30:36, don't exactly remember which one, you will see God of the Old Testament has cursed Jehoiakim,
Okay.
that he will not have himself or his descendants, anyone who can sit on the throne of David. Matthew wants to make Jesus the son of David. If you have Jehoiakim in that line, then it's like shooting yourself in the foot. How can he be the son of David when God already cursed Jehoiakim? Any descendants from Jehoiakim and Jehoiakim himself, they cannot claim the throne of David. So Jesus cannot be the son of David. So he takes the name away. That is why when we analyze this book critically, we know Matthew cannot be trusted because he's not a man of character integrity.
It sounds like he is reflecting the character of God.
It sounds like he's distorting history for a theological motive to make him the son of David by lying, by distorting, by changing history. But history is there preserved, that part of the history, in the writings of the Jewish people. So he has been here caught red-handed. Number one.
In fact,
Well, page two.
Hold on.
Okay.
So what he has done, he knows that the record is there, he knows that this will be checked, and he still presents this because he is not trying to deceive, he is making a theological point. That same theological point that Jeremiah made. And
He said these are all the generations.
of the genealogy.
When he says these are all the generations, well, is that correct? Is that statement correct?
It is correct according to God, yes. So you are being pedantic and you are twisting that and applying stronger meaning than the writer of Scripture.
When the generations were more than 14, and Matthew makes it 14, and he says these are all the generations, any sensible, critical thinking individual will agree with me. I'm not making a logical fallacy here. I'm saying any sensible, reasonable, critical thinking individual will agree that Matthew's all generations is ahistorical, factually wrong. Because in history there are more generations. He's cut them short and saying these are all the generations, he made them 14.
So
That's
he is making a
erroneous.
theological point rather than a historical point, and he
He made a historical error.
because he was writing to Jewish
No,
people.
he's made a historical error.
Understand.
He did not
You're
say,
not his reader,
he
not
did
the
not-
original intended
No,
reader,
no.
and you are missing the point.
he did not say this is a theological genealogy and this is part of the genealogy I'm giving. He says these are all the generations. A statement like this obviously means one thing. These are all the generations. He didn't say these are all the generations in a theological sense, but a historical sense less than that. He doesn't. So you have to really be sensible and fair to the text.
And
Not
you have to be sensible and fair to the
no.
text as
The
well.
text
This is what
says
the text was
the
intending.
text
The
says
text was not intending.
no. The text says exactly what it says. 14 generations. When it's not. Page number 2. As was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. It are wrong again. There is nothing preserved to this day that we can see any prophet spoke that the Messiah or Jesus Christ himself will be called a Nazarene. It simply does not exist. No prophets, no speech, no writings of any prophetic book exist that says he was spoken to be called a Nazarene. He just made it up. Prophecy. Not only that, he makes so many prophecies made up. Second example. Third example. During the so-called crucifixion, he says the bodies of dead saints came up and they went to the city and appeared to multitudes of people. Such a magnitude, event of that magnitude, dead bodies going and walking and talking to people. You would expect other non-Christian sources talking about it for generations. Their students, their children, their family talking about it. The Jewish chroniclers, the pagan chroniclers, even Josephus and others, they should be all talking about it. Not only that, even the other gospel writers should talk about such an event, demonstrating many individuals raising from the dead to support Jesus Christ to rise from the dead, for example. It could have supported that. No one talked about it. So, is this something that really happened, or Matthew again concocted it?
What about the substance of our friend's point that in Christianity, the Bible is not literally God's word like in the Quran? That there's more room for what is the intention of the gospel writing? Is the intention of the gospel writing to say that
They're deceiving
Jesus
us.
comes from a prophetic line, comes from the line of
But he's deceiving. He's making things up. He's distorting history. No, I'm saying he has a deeper theological motive, but he's being very deceptive. He's being dishonest. What's wrong with being dishonest?
the deep theological point.
Are you saying just like Paul, if he deceives people to bring glory to God and His kingdom, it's okay?
I don't know whether my brother would agree with me on this one, but when Jesus says that sower sowing seeds in the ground, is someone that's listening to that saying, "You've deceived me, Jesus"? Of course not, because they appreciate there's deeper theological.
No, we're saying some writer presenting about a historical figure distort history to talk about this figure for a particular theological motive. That is dishonest. That is giving you red flag, like, I can't trust this individual because he is twisting reality as he seems fit in his theology. Imagine he says, in the Old Testament, there are 4 God persons, because he wants to make a nice number. 4 sounds better than 3. He will say, no, how can you distort when God is 3 in the Old Testament, or 2 or 1 in the Old Testament, you make 4. You will question that. You will say, no, you can't distort history. And that's exactly what he's done. Exactly what he's done. That's why non-Christians would really question the integrity of the gospel writers, and enough material for us to say the Bible doesn't give reliable information about history, let alone of Jesus Christ. So that's why we need revelation to really give us the clear picture of what happened. And the Quran came as that revelation, exactly telling you what people went wrong in their belief about Christ or about the past, and give you the correct picture from Revelation. Revelation is not just only a historical book, it's direct knowledge from God about history, because God has been witness to all events in history, let alone partial things like some eyewitness people have said. That's why I'm saying, that's why when we bring to you the Quran, we say, why don't you accept the Quran with the evidence that the Quran presented? Why don't you deal with the evidence of the Quran? Because the Quran gives
contradictions in the Quran. I see the sources of the Quran.
Can you give me one contradiction of the Quran that fulfills the 8 conditions of contradiction?
What are the 8 conditions of contradiction?
You don't even know?
I have not heard of these.
Hang on. So you don't even know that 2 propositions to be contradictory, 8 conditions need to be fulfilled, and you are claiming there are contradictions. I mean, that's
have
really...
never heard this phrase. I am sure that if you talk through them, I will go, I understand that, I recognize that.
Right.
But because
Excellent.
you've got your little 8 contradictions,
No, it's not my little. It's not my little. It's a universally accepted and understood principle in Mansur. If you haven't heard, that shows. If you haven't heard,
I have heard of them without them being titled.
If you haven't heard, then that's
Please explain out of your great knowledge.
It's not sophistry. For example, I'll give you analogies to understand many of these conditions, right?
That's very generous.
If I say it's cold in London, that's one of my statements. Mm-hmm. It's warm in London, or not cold. Let's do it like that. It's not cold in London, and it's cold in London. So I have 2 statements from 2 different pages, for example. Now you'd say they're contradictory or not?
They are contradictory, yeah.
Right. But if you read the context, one of my statements was, it's cold in London because I'm describing winter season. And the other, I'm describing cold in London when I'm describing London in summer.
Okay, context I'm aware.
Context, right. Likewise, you have the subjects needs to be the same, the predicate is the same, the timing is the same. So you have conditions like this, 8 conditions. You can just
So were those 2, 3, and 4 of the?
no.
Of the
What I am
or
telling
just
you,
number 2?
what I am telling you, when you apply 8 of those conditions, all of those 8 needs to be fulfilled. At the same time, for 2 propositions to be contradictory.
Okay.
I am challenging you and every single people in the world, like I've been doing, and every Muslim is doing,
Yeah.
that you will not be able to find 2 propositions of the Quran contradictory, fulfilling these conditions.
Okay. So
Go ahead.
contradiction. First, we have the Quran saying that shirk cannot be forgiven. That if you associate someone else with God, that is unforgivable.
If you die on that state, then it will never forgiven.
Ah.
If you're bringing
So where does it
another of the
say-
8.
So
It's not. It's a context. If you
where
die,
is the context?
look,
there? Show me the
look,
context,
look.
please.
How much of the Quran have you read?
A bit.
Like how much?
Not all of it. I've read like the first 12, 13 surah, something
No,
like
he's
that.
bringing all the conditions here. Yeah.
Those are the 8 conditions. not the
Subject,
contradiction.
predicate, time, place, respect, quantity, quality, and modality. So,
Nice.
what I am telling you, you didn't know because you haven't looked into about this issue. Just went along talking about this contradiction in the Quran, perhaps. Now you would not do that if you go and check about this.
Or I'll check it and then double down maybe as well.
You
That's
check
also
it and
possible.
check it, and you'll never use a statement again that Quran has contradictions. I'm assuring you. Come back again and tell me that, yep, I've got a contradiction now based on 8 conditions.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah? Let's have a next conversation on that. But I'm 100% sure that you will not come back to me and saying, I have a contradiction. Instead, you'll come and say,
Can I hear what the contradiction was?
So yeah, I
Yeah.
said the first part of
Yeah,
the
contradiction.
which is the Quran says that shirk cannot be forgiven.
Yeah.
And the second part is when Abraham says to God, I associated others with you and God forgives them. So yeah,
Yeah,
on the one
so-
hand he says it can't be
so-
forgiven, on the other hand
so-
it's forgiven.
contextually of the Quran, if you die without asking forgiveness of your shirk, which is associating partner with God, then that sin will not be forgiven. You'll be in hellfire forever and forever.
So is that
If-
in the record?
I'm
I
just
was
telling. I'm
yeah,
just
please
telling
do,
you
please
in
do.
the Quran. No, I'm going to ask because you haven't read. I'm going to ask you kindly as a humble
Well, I
request.
can't remember
No.
all details, that's why. I have
Listen.
read,
What I'm asking you to
haven't got
read,
my memory
what
of
I'm
that
asking you
part.
to read is something different. I'm asking you to read the Quran from the very beginning to the very end, because you haven't read it, and you have an opinion about the Quran. So this is
Yeah.
something that I'm not asking you to read in one day, or in 1 week, or in 1 month. Take your time, read the whole Quran. So
For sure.
contextually, you'll find that Islamic belief derived from the text of the Quran. If you die without asking for forgiveness of your shirk association, you will never be forgiven. But if you ask for forgiveness, God forgives all sins. He forgives all sins, including shirk, if you ask before you die. But after that, it's not. Try another one.
Why does the Quran in that passage then say that shirk cannot be forgiven? That's not what
As
it
I
is.
said, shirk cannot be forgiven if you die on that shirk.
But that
if
part
you-
of the Quran doesn't say that.
No,
does it?
you haven't read the Quran properly.
But, so you answer me, guide me with your honesty and your wisdom.
I am asking you
Um,
to read that whole chapter.
For sure, for sure.
And then come back to me
Well,
next week and say, still he doesn't give me the answer.
Fine.
I'm not going to spoon feed for everything.
Agreed. Look, we
kind.
should read the whole Quran. and when
No,
it
that's something different. I said, this is totally different, not to understand the context. Because you haven't read the Quran, this is my humble request. My humble request, this is totally not relevant to this discussion. I'm saying, as I've realized you haven't read the whole Quran,
Yeah.
I'm simply asking,
There isn't a point.
read the Quran. If you read the Quran, the context will tell you this is what the text is saying.
But for now, we
text-
need to take it on faith.
No, now I'm saying I'm not going to spoon feed everything. I've already told you this is the contextual understanding.
Okay.
So if you really want, you can go and, do it on your computer with LLM, all this large linguistic model, and say these are 8 conditions, and this is a chapter, verse of the Quran. Does that contradict with
Okay,
this?
so contradictions, I get the picture. Each contradiction you'll say you've not read the full Quran.
No, I am saying anything that you bring, tell me now how does it fulfill all the 8 conditions? That's what I'll tell you.
Okay, so let's go to the second thing that I said,
Mhm.
which was about sources of the Quran.
Sources of the Quran.
And let's talk about Surah 18. Yeah.
Sources of the Quran. Quran comes from God. That's what it claims.
Okay, so
And if
Surah
you doubt about it, produce a chapter like unto it. That's what the Quran says. So you can falsify the claim of the Quran that is from God by bringing a chapter imitated by the Quran.
And yet, if I did that, I'm sure that there would be other conditions.
No,
like
no.
This
According to the conditions of the Quran, if someone imitates, listen,
which is the Gospel of John retold in Quranic style,
if-
but it doesn't meet the conditions.
if anyone imitates the Quran, anyone, according to the very criteria of the Quran cannot be from God. You don't need to. Exactly like it. The Quran came in a linguistic genre, in a stylistics that is not like how the Arab spoke and how they recited and composed their poetry, prose, or their speeches in soothsayers' speeches. Shakespeare's sonnet comes in a particular stylistics. Quran, when you look into it, it is not like the linguistic genre of poetry, for example, of the Arabs. They have 16 types of poetry. Al-Tawil, Al-Khafif, Al-Madid, Al-Rajas.
I get the picture.
You get the picture? Quran is on its own, unique genre. What the Quran is asking, no, Quran says, how can you call him a prophet when he's not even learned anything about it. He doesn't recite poetry, because what you see in the Quran is unlike your speech. That's why the Quran challenges you.
Some enemies.
They didn't say that. Shair, when they said, why? Because they said, okay, this one, but Quran refutes them and saying, where is it, this poetry that you talk about? The Quran is simply a linguistic genre which is absolutely unique on its own form. It is not like it, and in fact, if you can compare the Quran with the pre-Islamic Arab poetry, which survives, it's not like that. So the sources of the Quran, you talk about it, because Quran claims it's from God, you can just bring it. And again, the Quran has an objective criteria of what it's like, so people need to fulfill those conditions. Again, I can give you 8 conditions.
When ChatGPT, it's always 8. When ChatGPT is able to generate a chapter that sounds like
fulfilling
the
the conditions,
not
sounds like the Quran, fulfilling the 8 conditions of how the Quran is like, then 8 is the minimum I've given. Then of course the Quran has been imitated successfully. I've already produced a video with ChatGPT and imitated the Quran, and people are asking at the end, are you going to ask it to become a Muslim now? Because it said you can't. That's how it was. You can watch it. Type in Mansur, Quran imitation, ChatGPT, it will come up. It was about 2-3 years ago.
It's all extra hits.
Right. Coming back to Furqan al-Haq. Furqan al-Haq, Anish Shurosh, Dr. Anish Shurosh wrote it. It's not like the chapter of John and so on. It's a parody. And I've gone through 2/3 of it and I gave up because it became so boring repeatedly.
What is this to me?
This is a so-called imitations like the Quran, okay? Through Furqan. And he writes something and people might think, there you go, like the Quran. But as we go through chapter by chapter, we see he's made plagiarism from the Quranic text and phrases. He would big chunks of it from the beginning, from the end, from the middle, and just changing a particular pronoun. For example, if I said like, he goes, and he just adds the word S, so she goes, that's a parody. That's not how you imitate. You imitate through the objective criteria, not simply plagiarizing old text. If you put that on a plagiarizer, turn it in, do you know how much similarity it will be? More than 60%. So by wrong, plagiarize. It's not a imitation. So that doesn't help either. You can bring in so many examples on the internet. They all fail. Why? Because they don't understand the objective nature of the challenge. Many of the things I talked about in the video is all there.
It sounds very subjective.
No, I'm clearly telling you.
And how, when that objectivity was
so you're not even listening.
Does the Quran give you subjective?
So you're not even listening. I use the word objectivity. I use the word stylistics.
I am challenging you on those words.
So now, let me give you an example.
Please do.
So, say we speak in English. I am speaking. So if I said I is speaking, that would be not correct.
So grammar is one of the criteria.
Do you understand? Okay. In my speech, there are
objective rule that is in the Quran then. Grammar is part of this.
Excuse me. I'm giving you some analogies to understand objectivity. Sure. So Arabic language has certain forms of speech constructions. Quran has its own type of construction. And that type is clearly discoverable in the Quran as you read it. You can actually tabulate it. This is the structure of the Quranic chapter in terms of the stylistics. Noun, verb, preposition, composition, all of it you can do that. When you want to imitate it, you should follow that same line of objective structure.
Okay.
That's all. So it's not only about eloquence and meaning, it's that too. Because
Okay.
you don't just simply bring la 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 la. That doesn't know meaning. Because Quran has meaning. When the Quran says bring something like it, which has a meaning, so you have to bring a structure which has meaning, which
Can
has
you answer
eloquence.
my question now, though?
What is your
My
question?
question is, are these criteria in the Quran?
These criteria are extracted by looking at what the Quran is. And when you look at it,
Okay. So
hang on,
when did
hang on.
these
Can I
criteria
finish?
get produced?
Can I finish?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
When I look at the Quran, I can clearly see it comes in a particular stylistics. I can actually objectively categorize those stylistics. I can write 1, 2, 3, and I can show you how the construction is. As I mentioned, is it a verbal sentence or a nominal sentence? How it starts with? Yep. Does it start with a noun? Does it start with a verb? How does it apply the verb and the pronoun with it or without it?
Yeah, I get you. I get you.
No, you didn't get it because you're too not listening. What I'm saying is, so we have a clear extraction and derivation of objective styles from the text itself, right? So that is already there. It's available as a publication to the scholars by a scholar in Arabic language with examples, methodology and application. It's there. Why, even after this particular word is there, spelling out the objective nature, and still zero attempts have been there to say this matches. Why? It's been there for a number of years now.
When was this scholar? Can you answer my question now?
No,
When
I
was
am
this scholar
saying,
derive these
I am saying,
Yeah.
because people demand objectivity, there you now have it. A few years ago, this book was published for the whole world to understand the objective nature of this challenge. Now, it's been there, and we have zero.
Okay, when? How many years has this been?
Are you saying if this work is done now, it somehow disregards that the Quran has objective nature of the challenge?
I'm saying that if the
Hang on.
question has been open for many centuries, and then finally is
On the context of the challenge was the poetry of the time.
They fail.
They had their own structure of their poetry. It's objective style.
so because the style
Like
of the
sonnet,
poets was
like
different from
sonnet,
the style
yeah.
of the Quran,
Yeah,
that
so
means
you
the
obviously
Quran
know
is unique.
what was
The Quran has its unique form.
Yeah.
It has its unique form, and you can actually see it when you read it. Clearly, from very first chapter to the last chapter, all of it. It has linguistic novelties, innovations, because it's a new genre. It's like Arabic version 2 at that time.
Okay.
Yeah? So when people are going to imitate it, they have to bring something like Arabic version 3 in this style like it as the Quran. People are failing and they have failed. The question is, why are they not then accepting that it's beyond our human capacity? Because practically, that's what they're saying. Go, you have to go. Go and ask the scholars who are experts in the language and ask them to do it, because if you can't do it. So that's why I'm saying the Quran has its own evidence. When the Quran gives evidence from history, when it talks about how the pharaohs, for example, claim themselves to be God,
It's
the highest
interesting
God.
you bring up the Pharaoh.
Yeah, so
Because again, another thing that I can say against this
Mhm.
is that the Quran talks about the Pharaoh crucifying something. The crucifixion was not invented as a form of punishment until many hundreds of years later. So this is a historical inaccuracy. Similarly, in the same story of Joseph, the Quran says about him having 2 coins, and coins were not a thing at the time of the real story of Joseph. These came hundreds of years later. So again, the Quran is demonstratively, historically inaccurate.
okay.
And I don't need to believe it.
So let me now refute you black and white.
Go ahead.
Yeah? All of these too is available as a large academic document in our website, islamicawareness.org. So that's the reference where you can check what I'm about to say.
Sure.
The Quran talks about, first I'll talk about the 2 examples that you've given,
Yep.
and then I'll talk about the example I was talking about, the Pharaoh. Pharaoh, your point was Pharaoh what? He didn't crucify people?
He crucified someone. Yeah.
Yeah,
He
but
crucified the baker, I
but
think.
not at the time the Quran is talking about, right? You're saying?
Yeah, crucifixion was not a
This
thing.
this is an outdated, debunked, refuted Christian polemics of the old ages. Even though it's like within last 20, 30 years, old ages. Debunked, destroyed, demolished, black and white. It cannot even raise its head anymore. Why? Because we now have historical data from ancient Egypt itself through hieroglyphics. That was my point. The hieroglyphics demonstrated that yes, it's clearly in the hieroglyphics. There's a pole and there's a man hanging on the pole. That's how they crucified. Because crucifixion is impalement on a pole, on a tree, whatever.
So this is a different definition of
no.
crucifixion.
I am not defining crucifixion with the English word crucifixion. The Quran confirms that this is how the punishment was, hanging on a pole, right? So, tasleeb. When the Quran talks about it, exactly, this is something that was not even known. So you are absolutely now, you will be shocked to realize this information was not to biblical writers, they didn't know about it. And that's why Christian missionaries, they took this as a wow, gotcha moment for the Quran. History doesn't talk about anything like that. When now we learned about hieroglyphics and we saw the evidence, there we go. Now you have to explain, how did the Prophet ﷺ, not having knowledge of hieroglyphics, know that the pharaohs crucified people on the pole? How did he know that the pharaohs claimed themselves to be God? Ramesses, for example, he said, God. It's there in the hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics in the 7th century was forgotten. Jews, Christians, Romans, pagans, Arabs, Persians, all of them. There's nothing in the historical record that they knew how to read hieroglyphics. That is the current state of our knowledge today. No one knew, they've all forgotten. It was much later. Champellion, I can't remember the French name, right?
Yeah,
he came up with the Rosetta Stone discovery, and he started writing, reading the three different texts, translated one after the other. That's how we came to learn about hieroglyphics. Now you have to explain, how does the Quran, if it's not from God, talk about something that was not even known at that time, let alone the Jews and the Christians? They don't talk about it. The Bible doesn't talk about that Pharaoh claimed to be God. The Quran talks about it. So Quranic information about history is an evidence that it is from God.
So if I take away your polemics,
Second, I've not finished yet. Your second point.
Because your viewers have heard your voice so long, can they hear my voice for a
So
second?
remind me to come back to you about Joseph and the coins, so I can give you that as well.
So your essential argument, when I take away all the polemics that you're using, is that the word translated crucifixion is actually to be translated impalement.
No. I am saying crucifixion is a method of punishing people by impalement.
That's not the meaning as it has been understood since before the time
Do you have a phone?
of Jesus.
Do you have a
This
phone?
idea of the crux.
Hang on.
A crux
Do you have
is
a phone?
cross.
Do you have a phone?
So you're crucified on a cross.
Do you have a phone?
I do have a phone,
Go on.
yes.
Ask, what is crucifixion method of punishing people in the past? What is this method? Is it just on a cross? Can it be on a tree? Can it be on a pole? Go on, ask. Prove yourself wrong right now.
What about the coin?
Crucifixion.
You need a coin.
You don't do the coin?
Let's go for the
Let's
coin.
go to the
Go
coin.
ahead, go ahead.
Okay, you can prove yourself wrong at home. So the coin again, the Quran talks about, and they sold him for a miserable price that they didn't even bother to even count. So the Quran doesn't talk about coins. Dirham can be a piece of silver as well as it can be a piece of minted coin. We know minted coin come much later. So what was available there is silver, they're called ingots, yeah. So exactly, that's why they didn't even bother to count it, because in terms of, they didn't weigh or count. So the Quranic description is quite clear. Dirham is exactly as it is. In fact, historically now demonstrated, this is how they used to trade in terms of the pieces of silver or gold and so on.
Weigh the silver. It's
Right.
interesting you
Yeah.
don't say weigh as an effect, but count.
No,
as
I
an
am saying,
because you don't count ingots of silver.
No,
Right? Because they're all different sizes.
so let's go back to the text, and exactly what you will see is precisely describing how it was at the time. And this, to turn the table on you, goes against your Bible, because the word rahma is used in the Bible as an anachronistic term. Scholars of the biblical text admit that the Bible has an anachronism when it comes to this word rahma, coming from the Persian rahma and so on. So the Bible is the one who is in error by inventing or using a term when it's not of its time. But the
I'll have to have a
Quran,
look at that.
please do. So now let's go back to the document I want to show you as well. so that you can have a read it later, is this. Dirham. Joseph's time. And I said Islamic awareness
So this
website.
will take us to Islamic
No,
awareness.
I want to give you the references, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's again, a polemic website may not be the safest source.
What did I say beforehand? Did you listen? The articles are what kind of articles? Academic articles. Academic articles. So what you can do,
Be more blurred.
hang on.
Yeah.
What you can do, take any of the articles in Islamic awareness, including this, and show it to any academics in the world today of your liking, and ask them, is this an article written in an academic tone, an academic manner? Is it worth, for example, publishing in an academic journal, in a peer-reviewed journal? Okay? So this is the article talking about dirham and so on.
Where's it from? Who wrote
No. We wrote it in the article in academic manner, and you will see the references that we provide. If I can bring this.
Is it peer reviewed?
Hang on.
That's part of being academic, right?
Did I say from our academic period publication? I said an academic type article.
An academic style. That's a very different
Okay.
thing. It might be deceptive, perhaps, to people at home.
When you say it's deceptive, go and read it. Take it to an academic.
Sure, I'm very happy to.
Okay, this is that one. The other one's trying to respond to some of this, like dirham in the time of Joseph. Okay, 2006. 20 years ago, debunked argument are using it today.
Well, that's if it has truly been debunked, but I will have to judge that afterwards.
Read it.
Yeah, sure.
Look, if you go and you can look at
very long on?
academic articles, tends to be long, yeah. And when you go, I mean, as you can see, look at all these references, all from academic literature, all from academia, literature from primary, secondary courses, as well as anything that needs tertiary sources. This is exactly how it expressed it.
Yeah.
And many other documents in that site exactly like that. When it comes to, like, for example, crucifixion, let me show you, like, for example, what I mean. So if I go back again in Islamic awareness, yeah, sure.
How is he doing,
just
sir?
like to
Is he good?
just to finish this point. So if you go back to Islamic awareness once again, and we talked about what we wanted to show about historical issues. We can go in maybe here. So if you just simply search here, crucifixion. Okay. Search.
But remember,
Crucifixion.
truth does not come from the length of your article.
Truth comes from evidence, not the length of any article.
Indeed.
So crucifixion, what the Quran talks about, because the Quran is an Arabic language, and if you go to what the crucifixion is about, understood in the context of the Quran, the word that is used, because we're not using an English word crucifixion to talk about what it means, and if you then go to different kind of time frame in Assyria, in Egypt, and you will see the hieroglyphic records. Well, I just wanted to show you about what this crucifixion are, and you will see what this mentioned. And when some of the pictures I want to show you about crucifixion when they crucified people, so they can clearly see that even the letter forms, when they talk about it, get the right one. If I can show you. Because it's a long document, I'm not sure which part it's talking about. Papyrus. Capital punishment in ancient Egypt. We need to go to ancient Egypt. Right. Yeah. So just so sometimes a picture worth millions. Yeah. Point. Yeah. So you can read this document because this is what it is saying. Being impaled, put on the stake in Memphis. Right. So what's the actual hieroglyphic forms of it? Anyway, if you actually go, I mean, at this spot, there's so many hieroglyphics there. what you will see that this actual impalement is in the hieroglyphics itself, depicted with hieroglyphic symbols in terms of crucifixion. So you can have a look at that.
Don't worry, I can
No,
have
no,
a
no,
look.
no. Yeah.
It's on the symbol.
Oh, look, like that. Look at that. That's how it's impaled.
Impaled. Yeah.
Because that's what crucifixion is. Crucifixion is not cross, because cross came later in Christianity, but people was to hang on a pole and various other forms of punishment. Clearly you can see, even you don't have to read any text in it. It's a graphical description.
I'm not going to ask you about any contradictions in the Quran.
Yeah.
I read it recently and I didn't see any obvious ones.
Yeah.
I can't comment on the producer to do something like Understandably. I'm not even sure I fully understood what that challenge means.
Yeah.
But when I was reading it, a couple of moments that, well, the stuff about prophecy, about heaven and hell, about ethical stuff, it was all, it felt revelation. But then some of the stuff that was more about minute stuff, there's a couple of passages about, I mean, the one that really struck out to me was there was a few lines about the conduct of people at dinner. Do not trouble the Prophet with questions or staying too late at dinner. And there was other ones about the conduct of the Prophet's wife, as well as that it was allowing him to have more wives than other people.
Because there's social reasons of marriage. Marriage is not. So what's your question on this one?
The Quran is the whole of humanity.
As well as for the Prophet, as well as his community, including the whole of humanity. It's not going to be like, imagine a message came through you and he'll talk about people in the future. Nothing about you and your community. You will say, why do you give it to me then? Give it to them. So the Prophet who received the communication, he himself has been trained and molded to understand the revelation, implement in practice. So what used to happen is, people used to come and they used to hang around, just like disciples of Christ. They used to stay as long as they want. I don't know how in Christianity, but the companions of the Prophet, they used to come to him and stay there and learn more and more about him. But he's a human being. He needs to rest, he needs to sleep, he needs to have some privacy. So he wouldn't tell them, okay, time to go, friends or brothers. He was not someone who can tell them that because he was feeling so humble and shy to tell them. So that caused a lot of distress, because now you can see he's, they're staying longer and longer. So the Quran gave us a teaching through him for all of us. So for example, let's talk about this particular example. So when you've been invited in dinner, you've had your food and so on, okay, the guest that has come and the one who's host, once that is done, just leave them, because they have their privacy, they have their other things they need to attend and so on and so forth. Don't linger around, because it's not something that is fair. That is the teaching through the Prophet.
For God to reveal that to the Prophet.
Yes, God reveals even, yes. Let me tell you why. We are in a civilized society called Europe, and specifically in England. You've been to the toilets in offices, restaurants, in homes, in universities, in hospitals, right? Okay. When people go and urinate, men, do they urinate sitting or standing? The thing that made standing. What happens to the urine when you urinate? It comes all to you. It's demonstrated. They have done, you can type in YouTube and you'll come up with lots of examples. All the urine comes back to you, right? Yeah, it comes back to you. You don't even wash yourself. You zip and you go. Some people don't even wash their hands and go. So urine is all over. It's not hygienic. In a hospital, they have that thing. You expect the most hygiene teachings to be in a hospital. Our Prophet ﷺ taught us how to even clean ourselves to that level. Why? Because if you thought that people use their common sense, then everyone would, even in hospitals, not urinate standing. But people don't use their common sense. In a civilized country like England, they don't use their common sense. In hospitals, they don't use their common sense. So that's why God, knowing people's mindset, gives revelation even for this mundane, simple, core thing of household.
And you should make like the Prophet's companion.
See you later. Take care. We'll talk again.
Good to meet you.
Yeah.
On that thing of like God knowing the mindset of people and delivering stuff that people need to hear.
Yeah.
There was on that similar sort of thing, the sort of human level of the path, it seemed to be. There was that question over Aisha's fidelity with the necklace story.
Yeah.
And the Prophet Muhammad was, racked with. He didn't know. He didn't know. Was she faithful? Was she not faithful? And then
No,
eventually,
it's not about he didn't know or not. He hasn't got the proof to demonstrate. So he's not going to act as someone, is it called despotism or nepotism? She's my wife, so I'm right, she's right, whatever I say. No. He wants established evidence so people can just say, no. There wasn't anything demonstrable at all because there was rumor spreading around. Okay, revelation came much later.
That's what I'm wondering. Why did the
Why? If he was a false prophet, it's a very good point, man. He could have just said, "God has revealed to me, she is innocent."
Think of mindset of people.
No. It tortured him because he wanted evidence to come up and for him to show and demonstrate that. So he is not acting on his own behalf. So he's being, being harassed and suffering from all of this scandal. So he bore this patiently. So revelation eventually came and demonstrated their wickedness and their life and so on. And then, because God has His own ways of establishing laws, so people understand how laws can be implemented in society and what context the law comes. If it was like that, one can easily say, "Oh, that was quite very convenient. You have a revelation for everything." So,
that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. So now I would say, if he immediately brought, people may questioning like, so you are actually saying she's innocent by giving revelation. That's what people would have said. By having revelation not coming, like from this first revelation to next revelation, he's so eager. Why is no revelation coming? Because it's not his own making. Revelation comes to him when the angel comes with the revelation. So after the first revelation encounter in the cave of Hira, he was longing. Why is not revelation coming anymore? Longing. Because now things have transformed in his life. A fake individual, an imposter, he makes revelation as they go along. So this is totally opposite to what we expect in a psychological analysis. So I've written, actually I'm in the middle of writing in Twitter or X currently now, assessment of the prophethood of Muhammad from this psychological, historical, evidential ground. I've made up to 6 posts so far. I'm continuing to understand how we can assess him as what he claims. Because he claims to be a prophet of God. So his claim could be true. That's a logical possibility. Or he is an imposter, deceiving people in his deception, a massive deception for the whole world, millions of people being deceived. Or he could be someone insane and crazy, believing that he's a prophet, not lying, but he believes to be the case. Crazy people think they are what they are, but they're not lying because they sincerely believe that's the case.
It's sort of a fourth option.
The fourth option is like a legend, the figure that he didn't exist and people made up. Okay.
Which is that not insane, but that he really believed he was inspired by God. He was aware of the great traditions of the Prophet in the past. He truly believed he had a message to tell people. He was a great spiritual leader, and he had to share that message with people.
Did he believe that he was a prophet? That's what I'm saying. This is the first claim.
Yeah.
He believed he was a prophet.
Yeah.
That is the first option, that he is a true prophet of God. He believed it and he prophesied. So there is no dishonesty, deception, trickery, anything. No. I'm saying in that possibility, that claim is he claims to be a prophet, but by believing in a prophet. So when we analyze each of these, we would see that the only evidential option that remains with logic, with reason, with historical assessment, psychological assessment, social assessment, that he has to be what he claims to be a prophet of God. So I've started that. You can look it up, Mansur Ahmed on my Twitter. I'm doing that. But there are lots of other books talking about it already anyway. So this demonstrates that we can actually, on as much neutral ground, assess claim to prophethood. Because all Muslims, by very nature, will be biased when they're talking about the prophet. That's a given. But we try to, when we talk about the prophet, as much neutral position to help other non-Muslims to have a common ground and saying, on the basis of this neutrality, you can examine the prophet, examine the Quran, and then make up your mind.
prophethood and the Prophet Muhammad specifically.
Yeah.
Islam teaches that he is not God, he is just a man, but that is a particularly good moral example chosen for a particular reason, and him not being because of some personal qualities he has.
God chooses people as messengers as He chooses, as He pleases. He makes them, He trains them, molds them. This is how, it's not like how much you meditate. Oh, I meditated for 15 years, I should be a prophet. No. God knows a human being within a particular nation. He knows the character of that, and then of course trains them like that. The Prophet Muhammad, you would know historically, he was testified by his own community, foes and friends, that he was called As-Sadiq al-Amin, the trustworthy, the truthful one. He always spoke the truth and he always reliable.
How important is it for Muslims to believe that he was a perfect man and never sinned or anything like that? Is that
When you say perfect man, look, perfection means what as a man? Man is by nature always, in a shortfall. As a human being, he can make mistakes as a human being. But what we believe is, mistake means, for example, instead of saying this or saying that, for example, okay, turn it this way or that way, in a worldly matter, as a human being can do that. But we believe when it comes to message from God,
Sure, let's leave that aside. But
when it comes to message from God, as a prophet, not as a human being, as a prophet, but I'm saying as a prophet, there's a clear statement from the Muslim, he cannot make any mistakes. God has made him free from committing any mistakes when it comes to me as a prophet and a messenger. As a human being, for example, let me give you some of the mistakes in the eyes of God that God corrected him. So at one point there was a delegation that he was speaking to, some allies, like imagine that governments come and speaking to them. A blind man was coming and he was trying to take his attention. He didn't give his ear. Okay? To you and me, that's not a mistake, that's not a sin, that's nothing, because you are dealing with the most important people who will then, by them, the whole society will become Muslims. Okay? God taught him that he came, the people who you are speaking to, they might not be even sincere and willing to listen to you, but he came with sincerity. He might be someone who would change by listening to his message. So you should have given attention to. There's a whole chapter in the Quran, Abasa wa Tawalla, the Surah Abasa, okay? Towards the final 30th part of the Quran. So we can see the human aspects of the Prophet in terms of how he interacts with people has been corrected by God. Yeah?
So why then were there in the years during the time after thousands of stories circulating about the Prophet Muhammad on every aspect of the way of his life and all the things he said and so on? And if he is a man, okay, prophet who received the revelation and faithfully dictated to others, why the need to write everything he ever did in terms of including like exactly how he washed, and maybe you'll know better than me.
Because he came, it is very, if you think about it, now think in a different way. He came to tell people exactly how to connect with God, how to know why you were here, what's going to happen to you after death, heaven or hell, what you have to do to go to the right place and avoid the punishment in the hereafter. So he showed your whole life in terms of how you deal, how you talk with people, how you even interact, how you sleep, how you smile, every part of your life. Exactly. How you sleep. He told us to sleep on the right hand side.
But the reason why you know that is because someone deemed it appropriate to write down the Prophet.
They considered everything that he said.
Because they
because they considered him. This is a prophet of God. We have all our opportunity to learn about the message of God through him, so that we can better ourselves in this life and hereafter, and we can document it for the next future generation.
And the psychology of that Sahaba, or those people, those friends of the Prophet who were listening to his teaching, were at his feet when he was teaching.
Not all the time. At various times, various companions, they took like Abu Hurairah, Abu Hurairah, one of the names. He wanted specifically to stay with the Prophet, to collect his statements and so on, so he can pass it on. Because Muslims, look, because God told in the Quran, this is a book that is going to be the final, messenger the final. They understood from there, look at how, wisdom and wit that had, that we have to preserve this message for posterity. it's not only for us. So he started documenting everything about how he taught. What I say, like, when we sleep on the right, that's the best way to sleep. Because when you sleep on the left, your heart is now being compressed by your pressure, and you get all these dreams and nightmares and blood pressure, lots of other things. Even science now tells us the best position to sleep is on the right hand side. So the Prophet didn't just say, I'm telling you because it's scientific. He's telling you it's good for you. Sleep the way I'm showing you. So when he says, eat like this, wash your food, wash your hands.
I don't want to use the word idolize, but it's so rooted to.
No, a prophet.
Prophet, yes,
Everything
a prophet,
he
but
said,
also-
there are things, for example, he may have,
just say
to give you an
just-
example, he may have disliked onion, for example, or garlic. It doesn't mean he says, every one of you should dislike onion and garlic. That was his personal preference. So what we take from him is his teaching, not his personal thing as
If he
an
did
individual.
say I like garlic, there will be Muslims who say.
There will be Muslims who want to imitate it. Yes, and what's wrong with that?
Because
That's their love. That's their love. Yeah. So for example, when you love someone, think about it. When you love someone,
But there's no moral worth to be had in following and teaching the Prophet Muhammad that's not in the Quran and
so
doesn't have much value in terms of faith and morals.
but what we say is, we are concentrating on his sunnah, his teaching, okay? Not his own personal choices. We know about them, learn about them, but when we follow and emulate him and imitate him, because he's the role model, what says, he has made us as uswatun hasana, the best of examples to live our life, because he knows how to exemplify the Quran that came, because he will show how to live the Quran in your practical life, a message
How do
in
you
practice.
know that? Because God delivers the Quran to him.
Yeah.
And so where does he get this ability to live the Quran better than anyone else? Where does that emerge from?
So when the
Just
Quran says, be patient, show your patience in prayer. So if something happens, he will be patient and tell people patience. At one point, for example, one of his sons, Ibrahim, one of his sons, he passed away.
Yeah.
As a young.
Live in battle.
There was an eclipse. He had to tell people to remain patient, and he remained like, look, the sun and the moon do not eclipse because of some people's death. These are signs of God. So when you see something like this, you pray to God, the creator of the sun and the moon. Think about an imposter. What a golden opportunity. His son has died and there's an eclipse. You could have said, look, I told you so. Even the sun is crying by going into darkness that the prophet's son has died. He would have taken the opportunity, but he says, no, the sun and the moon does not die because of someone's death. These are the signs of God. So remember God, glorify him, pray to him, the creator of the sun and the moon. Yeah. So he is showing us patience through actions. Because there's one thing saying, look, if I told you, be kind, be good, be nice, that's one thing. But if I actually demonstrate to you how to be kind, how to be nice, how to be good, that's different. So practical life is the example that he demonstrated us to be a Muslim, submitting and turning to God.
The last example of something in the life of Prophet Muhammad, which seems to me to be tricky to understand, was right at the end, which is, I don't know whether you agree with me that there was a lack of clarity as to who the successor should be. But clearly Muslims at the time...
Yeah, so he's already made clear, but because the quarrel happened and something, because he asked for pen and paper and people
That
were...
was crucial, and that was
Yeah,
very...
but he's already indicated in his life. For example, when you see me in praying, for example, in a masjid, and when I'm a bit tired, I'll pick someone up which I think is capable to be the leader. He exactly did this. He showed who it's going to be. So he chose Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, and this is how the Muslims were united. Then when even the fourth Caliph Ali, radiallahu anhu, in which the Shia community divided with the Sunnis, when he became the Caliph, the issue should have been sorted. Now he's the Caliph, right? So why is there division? Why is there differences between you and me? Because now he is the Caliph. Just because he wasn't the first Caliph, because he's now is the Caliph. He can do exactly what he should have done if he was the first Caliph. So there was no reason to now have a division. But the problem is they divided in other grounds. So the political thing has because of some other reasons of
They must have had some
sectarianism.
genuine reason to
A
believe that Ali.
sectarian reason. Because there are people who believe Ali is God, not the Shias that you see, for example, the Isna Ashariya, right? But they're the other way. They believe he is God. And during Bashar al-Assad, some of the people were like that. Some of the people were like that. They would make ordinary citizens, Syrians, to say Ali is God. Say,
Okay, but
or Bashar is God. Even Bashar is God.
some genuine
Okay,
early
we have to go soon?
Muslims
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
in the Muslim last thing, some genuine Muslims in the first days, you know, around the death of Prophet Muhammad, who genuinely thought Ali was chosen by Muhammad to be a successor. Maybe they were a minority at the time, but
Yeah, some people can have opinion, but the majority was the one who understood.
Make it have a clear Quranic pronouncement would have been
The
good.
Quran doesn't need to spell out everything. The Quran, no. It doesn't have to tell you, oh, the 31st Khalif is going to be this. The Quran gave the guidelines to the Prophet. That Prophet is going to institutionalize a system in which there will be one Amirul Mu'mineen. The Prophet was the Prophet. After that, there will be a leader of the Muslims. He even said, if a second person came to claim leadership, get rid of him. The unity is under one leadership. Clear instruction. So we are working on it to bring back the system as the Prophet prophesied. There will be a time when there will be this biting oppressorship where people will be kings and leaders like this, dictators. He actually prophesied in a hadith. And we are seeing this in our very own time, how things are happening. But inshallah, God willing, as he said, then eventually this thing Ummah will come again in the mold of the Khilafah upon Nubuwwah and the prophethood model, like as it was starting in the very beginning. So this will come, but we don't need to just wait for that. We'll have to work now to unite Muslim Ummah to get the system back as he was saying. Anyway, what's your name?
Mike.
Mike, nice
Pleasure.
speaking to you.
Great
Pleasure
to meet
speaking
you.
to you.
Thank you
Perhaps
for
we can talk again another time. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. You take care. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.